Welcome to the AA Podcast, our little corner of the web where we are not afraid to discuss tough questions like,
when did nutrition, health, movement, and stress management become alternative medicine?
Where we embrace challenges in all aspects of life to become healthier and stronger versions of ourselves.
And where food and movement are the best kinds of medicine, and cooking meals at home is a revolutionary act.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the AA Podcast. This is Ashley Olson.
And I'm Andrea Green.
We are going to be discussing probably a very timely, but also maybe a hot topic, if you will, for some people, in the sense of maybe
Pushing buttons.
Pushing some buttons. Yes. Which we just like to do. I mean,
you are a button pusher, if nothing else.
But before we get into our topic today, which is going to be on goal setting and how to achieve your goals, we are going to share our weekly Bible verse. So mine is coming from Proverbs 19:21, and it says, "Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand."
And mine, I must like to hear myself talk because it's quite a bit longer. It's Ephesians 4:22 through 24, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness.
Love it. So, with that, I think that's really good because, like, when you think of a goal, I don't know if you, as the listeners, think of this, but it's almost as if you are putting off your old self because you are wanting to achieve a new, better, maybe more refined, older version of yourself. Doesn't mean you have to do a complete 180, but we are wanting to maybe challenge ourselves in a new way. So,
Yeah.
so I think that was very good. Good job.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to introduce this topic also because this particular show, Ashley has a wealth of knowledge on this topic that I don't have a tenth of the experience she does in terms of like habit change across a broad swath of the population. She has been training people for years and years and years, and ultimately at at the underbelly of everything that she is trying to do with clients is habit change. Like, and ultimately, I mean, you could apply that to my work too. We're
Oh,
all
absolutely.
we're all talking about habit change. Like any time that she or I advise people, it is all about habit change. But she is really boots on the ground when it comes to day to day after day, week after week, month in, month out. She is really boots on the ground and developing those close personal relationships with folks. And so this is really going to be her show today. So I am going to I'm going to
So if you're
function.
stopped listening, I totally understand.
Not a chance. No, they just turned it up. No, so I'm going to be in the primary role of interviewer today, and yeah, we'll just kind of pick your brain, Ashley, and you can tell us what you know about habit creation, formation, what works, what doesn't work. There's You showed me your outline, and I am really excited for the end of it. I think the listeners will really appreciate the things that you have seen that don't work, like the pitfalls, the biggest mistakes that you see with clients. That was super instructive as I read through there. So I think that's going to be a great part of the show.
Well,
Um,
awesome.
yeah. So I guess to begin, I I had something when Ashley first came to me and said, "Hey, let's do a show on this." I thought, "Awesome, that's fantastic." But I also, in the back of my mind, I also always think about, we kind of can't help but think about our successes and failures, right? so in terms of like goal setting and making a goal, making a plan, we all have goals, but I'm sure I'm not alone in having like a wheelbarrow full of failures also that always come to my mind. And so over the years, as Ashley and I have talked about this, because we have literally talked about this for like the whole of our relationship. So what, 8 years now we've been talking. That's crazy. Is that right? Six, seven, eight? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
I always forget the year. Was it
Like
16, 17?
2016. Yeah, it was
Yep.
2016. Crazy. Yeah, so we've been talking about this for 8 years. Like how do we do this? This is the magic sauce. How do we
Mhm.
motivate people? We're going to talk about the myths of motivation. Um, but also I just wanted to add to the discussion my only piece here, and that is to know who you are. And Gretchen Rubin, boy, I love this woman's research. She is kind of the habit change guru. I love what she has to say about like different personality types. And I'm certainly not boxing anyone in. There's lots of shades of gray, right? But the two primary types, that in terms of like knowing yourself and how you respond to expectations, I wanted to talk for a second because Ashley and I are completely opposite when it comes to these two areas. So, first of all, how do you respond to expectation, whether it's personal or otherwise? And I am what's known as an obliger in the Gretchen Rubin parlance. Okay, I am an obliger. Ashley is an upholder. There are more people like me than are like her. Uh, and that's not a bad thing. It's just how you're wired. So an obliger is somebody who I will, if I have personal expectations of myself, I will let myself down. That somehow is acceptable to me in my mind. However, if I have an expectation from someone else, I will meet that expectation. I will not let them down. Now, an upholder is someone who, once they make up their mind to have an expectation of themselves, they will follow through and they will do it. They will not let themselves down. And so, because there's more people like me, there needs to be more people like Ashley in trading positions who can help people like me who will let themselves down, to help guide us and help us come up with a plan for how not to let ourselves down, right? Now, I also think it's really important to know who you are with respect to discipline. Okay. So when you set a goal, this applies in a really big way to food. All right. So, because this is a health focused podcast, we talk about food and we talk about, eating trash versus eating great food, right? And so many times our goals have to do with food, what food to eat, what food not to eat. So it's really important, I think, that you know if you are a moderator or an abstainer. So once again, Ashley and I are complete polar opposites here. I am an abstainer, which means that if I start to have something, there is no such thing as like a little bit of something for me. That is not satisfying to me at all. I am like Cookie Monster and I need to get to the end of it. Ashley is a moderator, so she can say, I'm going to have this little square of chocolate, and that is just fine. And I am not that way. I don't understand that brain. It does not resonate with me. I wish that I were like that, but I'm not. And so for me, I have to say, I am not eating any of that ever, like at all. Because otherwise I find it, I find that I am unable to moderate. So I think that it's really good to know because if an abstainer, or I'm sorry, yes, if an abstainer says, okay, so here's my goal. I want to cut the amount of let's just say candy that I eat. I want to cut that in half, or soda, right? I want to have half the amount of soda that I normally have. Well, if you're an abstainer, you are shoving yourself into a moderating box that you may or may not be able to sustain. So, anyway, I just want to throw those two things out there that have been really helpful to know about myself for me, because it's also useful for your coach or your trainer to know about you. And
Hmm.
with that, let's hear what Ashley has to say. So,
Well, I hope this is a discussion and not just me
oh,
rambling
sure.
on. But I do think it's important to know who you are, um, and I'm not as familiar with Gretchen Rubin's way. I know Andrea's touted her name for the
Mhm.
last 8 years that I've known you,
Mhm.
but
It's true.
and I tried listening to her podcast. I had a really hard time with her voice. She was very hard to listen to.
I know. I know. I don't find her as objectionable as you do. But but I
It was like
yeah.
nails on a chalkboard for me, but I should try again
Yeah.
because it's probably like been 7 years since I've tried listening to her. But
Maybe your
no, she has
tolerance is
some really good
built.
points. She has some really good points, and I think that, in a perfect world that we would have almost a marriage of these
Mm.
two together, of
Mhm.
being an obliger and a upholder and a moderator and a abstainer, and that would kind of meld into this perfect um, being of both. So kind of back to what I preach to my clients is overall balance, and how
Mm.
do you achieve that. But I will say that for some, it comes very easily, which is probably that moderator um, and
Mhm.
the upholder. Whereas for most of my clients, it takes it takes a lot more discipline and work to get to that position. And it is what we're going to talk about first is the. I think it's very important to understand that when Andrew and I were talking about this podcast, um, we take for granted our thoughts and actions so second nature. It's obviously who we are, and we don't give much thought necessarily to our thoughts
Mm.
and
Mhm.
how they're formulated, how they are processed in our brain. And the brain has such a big um
Impact.
yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Impact or play
We
into
share a brain.
us, yeah, into setting our goals. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to know that there's a deeper level scientific, neurological process that goes into setting goals than just writing something on a board
Mhm.
or just saying it.
Mhm.
So we are no experts in this. I'm just going to give 4 areas of the brain that have a big part of setting goals and what they do. But we're not going to dive into the scientifics of it because, one, I don't
Yeah.
know.
If you want
Um,
neurobiology, go to Huberman.
yeah,
He's
exactly.
he's got this
Huberman
nailed. Yeah.
is the expert for sure, and he has amazing podcasts on goals, actually.
Mhm.
But basically, there's 4 areas of the brain that play a big part in when it comes to setting goals. And the first one I want to talk about is the basal ganglia, and that is that motor control. So, what we actually are literally doing, whether that is learning mentally or the behaviors that we are trying to change or get stronger. Okay, so that's the basal ganglia. Then we have the lateral prefrontal cortex, which is that immediate or long term planning. So, what do I have to do right now? And what do I have to do in the long term? So, if you're training for a half marathon at the end of June, okay, this week I need to run a total of 4 miles, but by week 6, I need to be running a total of, I don't know, 15 miles. And then by week 10, I need to have hit at least 10 or 11 miles, right? So that's that
Mhm.
immediate and long term planning. And then we have that orbital frontal cortex, and this one is that multitasker, but it really involves the emotions and the arousal state of setting these goals. So, when you've set a goal, you're super excited. Take for example, almost 3 months or 4 months ago, it was coming up on January 1st, right? And we're all excited. Oh my gosh, 2024 is going to be the best year. We're going to set so many goals, and we're just going to make it the best. And so you say these goals out loud, and that's that emotional and that emotion state of getting super excited and that arousal state. Okay.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to probably butcher this again, but amygdala.
You got it.
Yay, amygdala. So it is that go or no go pathway. So this is that, like, would you say it's like the fear or even the excitement of the body saying yes, go do this, or no, this is danger, stranger danger, don't go.
Yeah, I think maybe intuition is the right word,
Yes, yeah, okay. Yep.
like a
So
gut
those are
feeling. Mhm.
Yeah, so those are the four areas that the brain is actually working when you come up with some goal, which, if you
Mhm.
think about it, that's a lot. Like,
Yeah.
that's it's a computer processing things, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and so with that learning and the behavioral comes, so when we are learning something, when we are learning either, say, a language, or we're trying to create sustainable habits in our life, this
Mhm.
is what we are calling as rewiring the brain. We are doing something that's not natural. We're having to create new pathways in the brain. And one of the biggest culprits for um, either successfully rewiring the brain or not successfully rewiring the brain is sleep. Sleep is
Mhm.
so important when it comes to um, setting goals, which it
Mhm.
sounds weird to say that. It's like, why is sleep so important? Well, if you think of it in this terms of, like, your brain is literally creating new neural pathways, then it makes complete sense. What?
Yes. Well, I was just typing furiously, and I type so hard. So you probably heard that. Sorry about that.
It wasn't
Um
as loud as normal, but
oh,
yeah, I could hear
good.
you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know cuz I just had a thought. I
Oh, yeah.
didn't want to.
Well, what is your
Um
thought, Andrea?
well, Ashley, my thought is, so yes, sleep, you're talking about sleep being one of those things that could potentially derail you. And I just wanted to add two more things to the list, which is self opposition and circumstance. And just the importance of having a coach when you are faced with these. Like if you've had a really crummy night's sleep, or if you're getting into some self-sabotaging neural feedback loops, right? We've all
Mhm.
gotten into like these, okay, I do the same thing every time. So for instance, I have a lot of patients that talk to me about binge eating tendencies. And they will tell me I get into this loop where the same thing happens every single night and I end up binging. And so that's why it's so important, like when you are not meeting your goals, when you're at that critical moment of decision, that you have a coach in your corner, a trainer in your corner that can say, okay, let's talk through this. What are the tools? What do you need to ask yourself? um, because they can think logically and rationally when you can't. Right? So
Yeah.
sleeplessness is a circumstance. That self opposition is a circumstance.
Mhm.
Self sabotaging behavior, that can come against you, and before you know it, you've made the wrong decision. Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And having somebody that can have a outside picture of what's really going on. I mean, Andrea and I do this to each other all the time in life, like,
Mm-hmm.
not just goals, but I can see something in her life, be like, hey, I don't think this is as big of a deal as you're making it out to be right
Okay, she doesn't say it like that.
now. I feel like I'm very nice.
Okay, all right. Well, our feelings are not always.
Well,
Anyway,
we
yes,
can be a little bit more direct
uh,
with each other,
that's right.
but at the
That's right.
same time, Andrea can be like, "Hey, you're
Hey,
you're out of
you
line."
you're a grump today.
Yeah. I'm noticing some hostility in your
Oh my gosh.
voice.
That's funny. Go eat a sandwich.
Yeah, you,
And
you
get back
might
to
be
me.
angry.
Right. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Okay. A little
Sorry.
window
Okay.
into our relationship.
So
Oh,
sleep is very important, and we have a whole
yes.
episode on sleep and its
Mhm.
importance and all the things. But
Yes.
sleep is one
Yes.
of the underrated things that people think, the saying is like, "Oh, I can sleep when I'm dead." No. Yeah, you
Yeah.
will, but you'll be dead a lot
Right.
sooner.
Right.
So anyway, make sure that you are, especially when you are doing a maybe a bigger than normal goal, you're making
Mm.
sure that you're prioritizing your sleep
Yeah.
during that. So,
Absolutely.
um, so some questions that I ask myself, but also I ask my clients specifically is, especially when somebody's coming to me initially for help, it's like, okay, well, what goal do you want to achieve? And for the most part, most of the people that come to me, they're wanting weight loss.
Mhm.
Very few actually. I don't think I've ever had somebody that needs to gain weight. Um,
Yeah.
Yet, but most of the time it's weight loss. And when somebody comes to me and they have that goal of weight loss, I like to dive a little bit deeper into what that actually means. And as
Mhm.
a listener, you can do this with yourself. So if you have a goal and say, "Hey, I really would like to lose 15 pounds by the end of summer," which sounds like a long time away, but it actually really isn't.
Mhm.
But 15 pounds is a pretty significant amount for most individuals.
Mhm.
And so, what, why do you specifically want to achieve that goal? Most of the time, the answer I get, well, I want to fit into the clothes, into my clothes better, or well, I just want to feel better. I just feel better at X pounds. Is I hear that one a ton. Um, okay, what if you achieve that goal? What happens? Like, if you lose your 15 pounds, who is that person now? And I
Mm.
want you to describe that person in detail. Like, what is
Mm.
she doing?
Mhm.
What does her life look like because of those 15 pounds?
Mm.
And most of the time, people haven't thought of it in that realm. They're just thinking about that end goal, and they're not really thinking about like, oh, I don't actually know that my life changes. My
Right.
clothes might fit better, but am I actually truly happy? And so
Mhm.
a lot of times when I start having these conversations with my clients, it's not necessarily that it comes down to a reprogramming of the brain,
Mm.
aka that basal ganglia, um,
Mhm.
that we have defined a goal, typically weight loss goal, as a number on the scale. But that number on the scale hasn't actually that doesn't actually determine or redefine their life. What they're actually saying when they say they want to lose weight is they actually want to change their composition of their body. They want to be
Mm.
leaner. They want to have leaner
Mm.
muscle mass. They don't want to have this flab around their stomach. They
Mm.
want to have
That's
more
a really good
definition
point. Yeah.
definition in their arms. And so it takes a ton of work, and it's something that we have been programmed so heavily. And you might know, Andrea, I don't know where that programming came from. I'm sure it was back in the probably the 40s through the 60s of I can kind of imagine, I can kind of picture the commercials of, stepping on the scale and then going into the weight room and doing really light weights and
Mhm.
being on that shaker machine, and
Yeah. Well,
having
and
like
think
the
about
18-inch waist and
right. Think about in the 50s and 60s. Um, and this gets far into the weeds, but I'll just like sort of glancingly bring this up. We didn't have all of the xenoestrogens in our environment, and we are literally walking through a chemical soup every day. It would shock and astound if you knew how many tens of thousands of chemicals that we're exposed to that didn't exist back in the 50s and 60s. And if you look at videos of people back then versus people now, we don't even look the same. We
mm-mm.
don't uh, we really don't have much um, physicality in common with
Yep.
people in the 50s, 60s, even 70s.
So with that being said,
Hmm.
the shift of being an ideal, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes here,
Yeah.
body weight has not changed with these elements that are now in our lifestyle. I'm not saying that we shouldn't achieve a certain physique necessarily, but I think our expectations in our head, if we
Mm,
really were truly honest with ourselves, is that, well,
yeah.
I need to weigh say 120 pounds because that is what I imagine the ideal body looking like.
Right.
But also it's kind of been inbred in my brain that if I don't achieve this weight on the scale, then
Mhm.
I'm unhealthy, I'm fat,
Mhm.
I I'm a failure basically.
Right. Right.
But what I try to do with my clients is redefine what that actually is. So a lot of my clients, I do have them either way, but I'll even say, you know what, we're not weighing for a long time. I
Mhm.
want you to focus on these habits and these sustainable habits that we are trying to achieve to
Yeah.
get to your goal of what we actually have defined now as a physique change rather than just
Mhm.
a scale change.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, what are you actually specifically? Get super specific on what you're wanting to achieve. And if you don't be vague, like be very, very specific. So if you just come to me and say, I just want to lose weight, that's super vague. If you say I want to be fit, that's super vague. I need to know what that actually is defined for you as. And so a lot of times, Andrea and I were talking about this, like a lot of times, somebody at my age may not be thinking of it necessarily yet, but maybe somebody in their 60s,
Yeah.
they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm seeing my parents in their 80s
Mhm.
and they, I don't trust them living on their own. I
Mhm.
don't know if they fell, if they could even get up. These are now real concerns
Right.
of mine. And so, what it actually
Yeah.
means to be fit is actually I need to be able to comfortably and confidently be able to um, get off the toilet, is one. Uh,
That's literally what I tell every patient. I'm like, look, body composition is everything. I want you maintaining musculature, and I have this conversation with every single person
mhm,
that comes to me wanting GLP-1s. And yes, that is a shameless plug for our shows on Manjaro and tirzepatide, semaglutide, all those GLP-1 medications. But yeah, I literally tell them you want to be able to not call the fire department to get you up off the toilet when you're 75, right? And
right?
every single time. Yeah, I'd really like to avoid that if possible. So, yes, yes, critical.
So that's getting down to being more specific is
Yeah,
on
very
your goal.
granular goals.
Now, I think it's also important when you set a goal, and this kind of goes back to the psyche of setting goals, but um, it needs to be just outside your comfort zone, just feeling just outside your reach of possibility, but not so much that in the end, it's like so impossible that
Mm.
okay, for example, um, a goal of mine, I could say by this August, I'm going to run a 100-mile race. That is stupid.
Yeah. One, because she hates to run.
I hate
Yeah.
running, but
Right.
I have not ran and I can't tell you how long. So for
Mhm.
me to set a goal of 100 miles by this fall, which is basically 5 months from now, that is unrealistic.
Yeah.
Now, if I did have a passion for running and I really
Y-
wanted to do a 100-mile race,
Mhm.
my a better goal would be to set that, maybe a year or two in advance.
Mhm.
But to have a goal by this August to run 100, that is just impossible. However, what is more possible if I really had a passion for running is I could run a full marathon by this
Mhm.
fall,
Mhm.
potentially.
All right,
Sounds
10K.
horrible,
Yeah.
but
Sounds
if
awful.
you were training for a full marathon, you could definitely do it
Mhm.
by this fall. Okay, so it's definitely outside my comfort zone. It feels just enough out of reach, but it's not impossible. 100, yes, impossible.
Mhm.
24.6 miles, not necessarily impossible. Okay, so with that, I also have my clients define the action items that have to take place in order to achieve these goals. So,
Mm.
another way of saying it, and Huberman said this in his podcast, is like, what are the verbs? What are we
Mhm.
doing? What are the actions that we're doing? Okay, so going back to losing weight. Okay, we've nailed it down that losing weight actually wasn't the actual goal. We actually
Mhm.
want to put on that lean muscle mass. So then what do you need to do, the action, in order to achieve that goal? What is your major block of action to be able to do that? Okay, well, in order to put on lean muscle mass, the biggest thing is to make sure that you have a gym. You
Mhm.
have to have weights.
Mhm.
You need to be lifting. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, if you're going from 0 workout days a week and you say you have a goal now of putting on some lean muscle mass, and back to kind of an example of what may is probably too big of a reach goal, is I want to work out 6 days a week. If you're going from 0 to 6, absolutely not going to happen. Like you
Mhm.
might do 2, 3 weeks at that, and then you're
Maybe.
gonna fall off yeah, you're gonna fall off the bandwagon, and you're gonna throw up your hands in the air, and then you'll be like, well, that goal wasn't really for me anyways.
Mhm.
But if you were to take that goal of putting on lean muscle mass and say, hey, I'm going from 0 days. Maybe a better goal for me is to have a range of 2 to 4 days a week of hitting the gym, or maybe 3 to 5 days a week of hitting the gym. I really like doing ranges,
Mhm.
because if you have a minimum of 2 or 3 days to get to the gym, but you say your goal was 2 days a week, but you hit three, you feel like a winner. You're like, I
Mhm.
overdid it. I am such a BA. Like
Mhm.
I am killing it this week, right?
Mhm.
But if you set a goal of 5 days and you hit three, now you feel like a failure. So we're kind of going back to that psyche a part of goal setting, and
Mhm.
it's kind of in a sense it's kind of like tricking your brain, uh, but you're really rewiring those habits and you're reframing the mindset, of how the brain is thinking about achieving these goals.
Mhm. Yeah.
So for example, if you have the goal of putting on lean muscle mass,
Mhm.
you are working out 0 days a week. We've already determined that maybe 2 to 3 days, 2 to 4, 3 to 5 days a week is a better range for you to start with. Okay, that's how many days. But now, what actually has to happen to get yourself to the gym to lift the weights?
Yes, and again, I'm going to put in a plug here. This is where for again, it depends on the way that you're wired, but like the way that I am wired, for those of you out there who are wired like I am, I have big grandiose plans. Um, but I really benefit from some help. Like I can see the finished product, right? I can see
Mhm.
the finished goal, but I need I really benefit from someone helping me to determine what are the steps that I need to take in order to get to that goal, right?
Mhm.
You don't just fly to the top of the mountain. There are 1,000 steps in between you and that goal, and having someone help you to figure that out and lead you through that process is really helpful.
Agreed. So for getting to the gym, okay, are you driving? Or are you walking? Is it downstairs? Is it,
Mhm.
across the street? Is it a 30-minute drive? Okay, figure that out. Okay, you need to drive, walk to the gym.
Mhm.
That's a first action step, right?
Yep.
Then once you
Yep.
get to the gym, you have to pick up the weights. They're not going to pick
Mhm.
them up themselves up. And then I like to even, and this goes back to having a plan. And this is where having a coach that can
Mhm.
really put together a plan that one again pushes you just outside your comfort zone
Mhm.
but is still attainable, um, and that you can measure your progress, is really helpful. So okay, now you say 2 to 3 days minimum a week, 2 to 4, 3 to 5 days a week you're going to the gym. Okay, am I spending 45 minutes, am I spending 60 minutes there? Is 30 minutes of that going to be focused on compound lifts and 30 minutes of that focused on accessory? Making sure that
Mm.
you're honing in, you're going on a micro level of what this truly looks like. And this is something that I think people fail to truly do when they set a goal, is because the goal is so romantic. It's so exciting.
Mhm.
It's like butterflies in your stomach. I can't wait for this to happen. But what happens is, and I definitely have done this too, is like you have this goal and then that's all it ends up being. It just is a goal, but there's no action that comes into it. You don't look at that
Mhm.
microscope level of what actually has to happen to achieve it. So
Right.
make sure that you have a microscope level of what that looks like on a daily and weekly and monthly basis. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Andrea made a really good point of like just being careful how you word your goals.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think again this speaks to, my example, very similar to Ashley's. Like if I say I have a goal of working out 5 days a week versus telling myself, okay, I have a goal of working out at least 3 days a week, right? Then if I work out 4, in the first example where I say my goal is working out 5 days a week, if I work out 4, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
But if I say I'm working out at least 3 days a week, I still have the latitude to do 5, which I'm not going to do. But I have the latitude to do it. But if I make it 4, I am a rousing success.
Hmm.
So the way that you word these really makes a difference. And again, I know I'm a broken record, but having people to help you, coaches and trainers, this is literally what they do. How this is how they see the world. They help you to put your goals in the most attainable verbiage possible.
Yep. Absolutely. And one of the things that is super helpful, and I think a lot of people they do this initially, but then it just kind of falls to the wayside. But something that is super helpful is literally with your hand. Pick
Mm,
up a pen. I know it's a foreign object.
mhm,
And literally write down your goals and these action items. But I want to take it a step further, and this is something that I believe was a study done, that showed that if you writing your goal, sure, that's great, but for the people that actually write their goal down on a daily basis and the action item that they need to do that day to achieve that goal in the long run, they had a higher rate of
Mm.
success.
That's so interesting.
And not just write it and put it in the same place, put it in different spots. So, sometimes people will be like, put your goals on your bathroom mirror, and as you're brushing your teeth, you reflect on them. They're actually saying that that almost becomes a numbing effect. Like it
Mhm.
just
I can
becomes,
see that. Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's there. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, yeah, yeah, sure. I'll get to it later today. But if you're literally getting a pen and paper, writing it down, putting it somewhere else in the house where it's not necessarily a common place all the time, there's
Mhm.
a, it's basically, um, it's reprogramming that nervous system
Mhm.
basically. So
Yeah.
it's going back to the brain function of that orbital frontal cortex, that is that emotional and arousal state. So we want to keep that part of the brain excited to keep going towards this goal, because let's be honest, as you get along the journey of a goal, it kind of becomes mundane, it kind of becomes a little boring. Like,
Mm.
but you
Mhm.
need something that keeps that brain excited to keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
So a common myth too that I thought was very interesting was telling multiple people about your goals.
Mm.
So this kind of goes, they sometimes people say, well, if you put it out in the universe, then you're held more accountable. And what I have found, even with myself and even my clients, is that if they end up telling too many people,
Mm.
it's almost like, and it, I don't even know if it's the right term is, but like it's almost like an excuse not to achieve it. Now that also goes back to Andrea's point of knowing who you are,
Mhm.
because if you are somebody that like, oh, if I tell like 10 people that I'm doing this, oh, I am doing it. Like
Right.
I am
Mhm.
not letting those 10 people down.
Yeah.
Whereas if for somebody, for me, like me, if I told 10 people, I'd almost feel like, it's not that special anymore. Like,
Okay, so this is interesting. So Gretchen also talks about there's some person Gretchen said, um, but she also talks about some people who are kind of oppositional, and you are this person. You are with
no.
the T. No, you are. You have this. There is. Oh gosh, it's a very very common tendency, and we all do it. We all do it. But when like for instance, if you're telling someone, we have this need to be an oppositional force against something that's coming at us. So for instance, when I spent, oh my gosh, I spent 3 or 4 semesters studying motivational interviewing.
Mm,
And one of the principles is that you don't give the person something to push against, right? Because when I tell you, Ashley, how it's going to be, your mindset is no, it's not.
do you see this
Yeah,
hand?
yeah, I
You
do
can
see the
speak to
hand.
it.
Yeah, and but we all have that in us to a certain degree. And so I think that's what this myth is tapping into, because I
Hmm.
find this really interesting and also true.
Yeah.
In fact, I do better when I don't tell the whole world, right? So yeah, I find that very interesting, because all of a sudden, you've got all these people who are like, okay, this is how you said it's going to be, so this is what we're going to reinforce. And if there's a vacuum, you will create the opposition yourself, even if you were the one that came up with that goal in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. I understand that.
Yeah. So, um, if anything, like almost keep your goals a little secret, and be very selective on who you are telling them to. And I think, um, yeah, yeah, I think just being very
Hmm.
selective on who you tell them to.
Yeah.
And as a coach, like obviously my clients tell me their goals, but I'm a, as much as I'm, a friend to these people, I'm not. Like
Mhm.
I am literally holding them accountable to what they've told me that they want to achieve. And so um I help them create that discipline in the best way possible to achieve that consistency in order for them to reach their goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, some common mistakes that I see with my clients and
This is what I've
others.
been waiting for. Yes.
um,
This is
Now
good
that we're
stuff, people. Take
45
notes.
minutes in.
I know.
Um,
I know.
so, the biggest mistakes that I see my clients make or others that I see trying to achieve goals, one, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, is they set too many goals.
Mhm.
So, for example, I'm a health and fitness coach. So, um, going back to how many days a week? Okay, you want to work out 5 days a week? Great. I think that's a little egregious, but that's
Mhm.
what you're saying you want me to do. Okay, 5 days a week. Well, then I also want to lose 15 pounds.
Mhm.
And then I also want to run 100 miles by this fall.
Mhm.
And then I also want to, and then I also want to
Right.
stop right there. Have one big goal that you want to achieve. I honestly tell my clients, I I want you to have one big goal, but I do not want you having more than 3. Like, that is
Right.
just way too many. You're going to get lost in the weeds once we break that big goal down, and
Mhm.
you're going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to be basically crippled, and you're not going to achieve anything. So let's focus
Right.
on one big goal that we break down into bite-sized pieces that we start chipping away at and achieving.
And okay, so I don't know about you, but with health and fitness goals, because I deal with this too, but not in the same very intimate way that you do. Um, but what I find with health goals is that if we set a couple of really good, strong ones, they affect everything else. Like there's this downstream tendency where, good things washing over everything else, it raises all boats, right? It's the rising
Mhm.
tide that raises all the boats. So
Mhm.
everything starts to improve even if you refine it down to manageable number of goals.
Absolutely. Um, Another mistake that I see is they set a goal, but then they don't actually sit down and draw out the roadmap on how they're going to get there.
Mhm.
So, going back to being super specific on what goal you want to achieve, but then what are the actions that have to take place in order for you to get there? Write down your goal, then figure out what it takes to achieve this.
Mm.
The one question that I really loved, and I can't remember what podcast it was, but they said, ask yourself, what is the future version of yourself doing to maintain or achieve the goal that you've set out to do?
Hmm.
So, what is that future? I want you to envision that person has lost the 15 pounds. What are they doing? What is that person doing on a daily, weekly basis to either
Ah,
maintain or
this
keep
is Lane
achieving that
Norton.
goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
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 it
yeah.
is. Mhm.
So I
Very
just
good.
loved when he said that. It's like, okay, take yourself out of this body that you're currently in
Mhm.
and put yourself in that futuristic body that you are going to achieve. What are they doing? Okay.
Right.
Um Another big mistake that I see is, and it's kind of going back to fine tuning what that goal is, like we talked before, but they don't have a strong enough reason why they want to finish the goal.
Ah,
Like,
yeah.
okay, you want to lose 15 pounds? Why? Well, I'll feel better in my clothes. Well, why does that matter? And
Mhm.
so you introduced it to me,
The
honestly, is
whys.
the
Mhm.
why. Ask yourself the 5 whys. And
Mhm.
honestly, I've told my clients sometimes it takes more than 5
Yeah.
questions of why. Um,
Sometimes it does.
so sometimes it's 50 whys. Why do
Right.
you want to do that? And I'm gonna, I don't think I put this on here, but the other thing too is it's okay to set a goal and then realize a month in that you don't actually want to achieve that goal.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like, you may initially say you want to lose the 15 pounds, but once you get into, like, say, lifting regularly and you're seeing how strong you're getting and you're seeing some more definition, that 15 pounds actually then might shift into, no, I actually want to put on more lean body mass.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people who aren't familiar with the health and fitness world and weightlifting specifically, they don't actually know what that means. They don't know that
Right.
15 pounds lost is equals a better looking body. They
Mhm.
don't know that putting on more lean muscle mass, which might mean they stay at the same body weight, means that they actually look better.
Right.
They can't comprehend that yet because they have not experienced it. And
Right.
so once
Mhm.
they start experiencing putting on lean muscle mass and they're able to see the physical changes, but the scale hasn't necessarily changed, then
Mhm.
that might be when they say, you know what, my goal isn't actually to lose 15 pounds. My goal is to just keep getting stronger and put on lean muscle mass. And in doing so, I'm actually losing body fat, because body
Mhm.
fat loss is way different than body weight
Mhm.
loss.
Sure is. Yeah.
So that's another, just a little bonus for you
Mhm.
guys. Um, Another thing that I see as a big mistake that clients are making is that they see failure as a bad thing. And
You're
it
gonna have to unpack that a little.
so failure is, if you know, this is the person that likes to see the glass as half full, but um failure is actually a great thing, because what does that mean? It actually means that you tried something.
That's true. Yeah,
You actually
that's
put
true.
yourself out there to try something new. And if, you know, if it didn't work out, hey, at least you can say you tried. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing too is, um, kind of going back to setting goals. If you were working out 0 days a week and you just went ahead and set the goal of 5 days a week that you're going to go, but
Mhm.
in actuality, on average, you only went 3 days a week. So in your head, you're a failure because you didn't hit the five.
Mhm.
Well, let's turn that boat around. You went from 0 to 3.
Right.
You're
Right.
consistently hitting 3 days a week. So in your head, you're a failure because you didn't hit the five, but you're working out 3 days more than you did before.
Mhm. It's still a net positive.
It's still a net positive.
Yeah.
So, um, so yeah, I love the saying. I think it was Lane Norton too. Confidence is willingness to wait in uncertainty.
Mhm.
If you're not willing to put yourself out there, in whether it's in your career, whether it's in your health and fitness goals, whatever it may be, or you're growing in your relationships, if you're not willing to put yourself out there and to try something new, you're
Mhm.
really strengthening the lack of confidence rather than building confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point.
So another mistake that I see is not rewarding yourself and rewarding yourself too often. So this is
Treat
kind of go
yourself.
yeah. So um kind of going back to maybe somebody setting a big goal, but they don't necessarily um have it written out the pathway to get there.
Mm.
So they don't have these milestones in their plan to get to their goal because they don't have a plan.
Mhm.
So they don't have these milestones to be like, oh my gosh, I achieved this. Um, a really good example would be like a debt snowball. So you have, say you have $10,000 that you need to pay off. Well, it's broken up into 10 different either credit card or loans that you have, right? And each of them are 1,000.
Mhm.
Well, if you visually only see the 10,000 and you've paid off 2,000, that seems so daunting that you have $8 more thousand to pay off. Whereas if you had this visual of that, you
Mhm.
can be like, oh my gosh, I just canceled this credit card because I paid it off. Oh my gosh, I just told the bank I'm paying off this loan today, and you can cross those things off. Then you can visually celebrate those accomplishments, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, so going on to like with this debt snowball, like if you paid off 10,000 and you paid off two, and you're like, well, I'm gonna go reward myself by going and eating out. But then you're putting
Yes.
it on a credit card. Well, then that kind of defeats the purpose, right? So,
Yeah.
kind of going back to health and fitness, like say you worked out 5 days this week and you're like, I'm going to reward myself. And then it's like a weekend binge fest, basically, because you've
Yeah.
been super good Monday through Friday with both nutrition and workouts, but then you're just exhausted and have nothing
Mhm.
left, and you're like, hey, I did really good, so I'm going to celebrate Saturday morning with brunch. Well, brunch led into
Yes.
all day
Yes.
celebrations, and then you're so tired and need food, so you celebrate Saturday night, and then, well, you're feeling sorry for
Right.
yourself Sunday morning. It's just a
Right.
vicious
And the
cycle, right?
weekend is blown anyway, so I might as well. Lots of that kind of
Ex
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a healthy balance of rewarding yourself when you achieve a goal, but then also make sure that it goes back to that dopamine hit, so
Mhm.
that uh, frontal cortex, the orbital frontal cortex of that emotional arousal. Remember that that can get numbed out. So if
Mhm.
we are constantly wanting to make sure that there's a kind of a dopamine hit, if you will, and so I love this example that Huberman gave is like maybe when you achieve a milestone towards your goal, maybe instead of just automatically rewarding yourself, flip a coin. Like, okay, I'm gonna flip a coin. If it's heads, reward yourself. If
You
it's
know what?
tails, you don't.
Oh, you know what's coming from Andrea's room? 2 out of 3. Reward. Yay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. And then we've touched on it multiple times, but if you guys are not tracking, what I meant to look this up. There's a saying, that which is not tracked,
That which is not oh geez, what's the word they use? Um
measured, that it,
Measured is not changed. Yeah.
yes. So if
Yes.
you are not tracking, aka measuring
Mhm.
your progress, it is so easy for us to forget where we came from. It is
Mhm.
so easy to forget where we started, and that where you are 4 weeks later is actually
Mhm.
huge progress, even though 4 weeks later you're like, yeah, I work out 3 days a week. Like,
Right.
but when you started, you were at zero,
Okay,
and you've been
but
four
there
weeks in.
again, it's very important to know who you are because there's a lot of people if you are determined that measuring your progress on the scale every single day
Hmm.
is what you want to measure and you want to measure that consistently every time you wake up in the morning, especially for women in this, complex hormonal milieu that we live in every single day, you can be up 2 pounds, up 5 pounds, like, and then the next day it's gone, and like there are all kinds of fluctuations. So you have to know, are you able to keep going regardless of what that says? Can you divorce yourself from the emotion of seeing those numbers go up? Because if you can't, that is not a good measuring tool for you.
And that's where I would say that for my clients, we use
Yeah.
body weight and measurements as just a metric, but I have them measure things that they can actually
Right.
control towards their goal. So you
Yeah.
cannot control your weight, you cannot control your measurements. What you can control that do contribute towards your weight and your measurements are your actions. And that
Mhm.
is where you have to set forth that action plan to achieve your goal.
Yeah.
So what did you do this week that actually got you closer to that goal? Did you meal prep your meals? Did you
Yes.
track what you were eating on a daily basis? Every
Mhm.
single nibble, every single little grab of, something,
Mhm.
every lick of the spoon of peanut butter, did you track all of that? Because that's what you can control
Mhm.
towards getting to your weight loss goal, if that is
Yeah.
your goal, right?
That's so smart. Yeah.
So something that is in the business world is objectives and key results. So your objective is your big overarching goal, but your key results are what you are doing on an actionable basis on a daily, weekly basis that gets you to that objective. Okay.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and then a big one that I hear, and it drives me freaking nuts, but it it is a big one, and it's the lacking the motivation after
Mm.
starting.
Mhm.
And I should have looked this one up too, but motivation is fleeting. It is not something that I have on a daily basis. It is actually something that I
Mhm.
rarely have. And somebody might be listening and be like, well, then it just must come easy for you. No, I've built very carefully some lifestyle habits, and I've been very purposeful in making sure that those lifestyle habits are sustainable
Mhm.
for the life that I want to achieve. And I am not perfect as much as Andrea thinks that I am when I set forth a goal. I am not perfect.
Ah.
But the biggest thing that everybody can do, no matter who you are, is it's that rewiring of the brain. And it is,
Mhm.
if the goal is important to you, you may have a bad day. You may have fallen off, quote unquote, the bandwagon one day. But what is that action that you're going to do that next day that gets you back on the wagon, that fixes the wheel, and um, gets you going again?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
a daily strategy that you may need to really do and force yourself to do on a daily basis, especially in the beginning, is one, write your goal down. What's the action item you need to do? But after a while, if you're finding that you are maybe your goal has changed, then a daily action item that you can do is ask yourself, do I want to pursue this goal? Is it actually something that I want to pursue?
Mhm.
If yes, then what is the action item that I need to do today? If it's no, then you need to either reevaluate that goal, or maybe you need to reprogram, start working on reprogramming the mindset around that goal. And what I mean by that is, like, you might have a goal that, okay, maybe you have quite a bit of weight to lose. And so say you have 100 pounds to lose, and you're like, oh my gosh, that goal is just very daunting. I don't know if this should be my goal. I don't know if should be my goal. Well, what are some things that you can do to that may help ease the weight, literally, of that
Mhm.
100 pounds, both mentally and physically, but mostly mentally, of having a goal of 100 pounds is very daunting. But if I just got on my bike for 5 minutes a day when I did 0 minutes a day,
Mhm.
that's getting me to my goal. It might be a slow
Right.
process,
Right.
a slower process, but it's instilling those daily habits
Mhm.
that is going to get you eventually to that goal. And don't mean to be quoting Lane so many times this podcast, but he had such a great podcast. I can't.
He
It was on
did.
the what podcast was it? It was
It
the
was oh, shoot.
something CEO, right?
Yeah, I didn't know the
No,
guy.
daily. It was acronym DACO.
Oh,
Um,
it was the direct anti direct anticoagulant. It was a DAO, a DOAC. It was yeah, so in my world DOAC is direct oral anticoagulant, but that is the podcast and I can't even
yeah,
remember what it stands for.
yeah. But he said whether you win or lose, you still have to wake up and do the process all over again. And I freaking love that because you can choose not to achieve your goal, but
Mhm.
whatever you were doing to not achieve that goal, you're going to
Mhm.
get up and do it again.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you want to achieve that goal, you still have to wake up and you have to do
Mhm.
something. So if that goal is important to you, you still got to do the process.
Right.
And I just love that. I just thought it was really good. And he also added that, but when you stop doing the process, that's when you really lose. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that's a little motivation for you guys. But do you have anything to add?
No, it's the same kind of idea that, you don't fail until you give up, right?
Yep,
You don't take the
absolutely,
you don't take the loss until you throw in the towel.
absolutely. And you guys, at the end of the day, it's literally up to you to decide if you want to achieve the goal. Like I, as a trainer, Andrea, as a health
Whatever
professional,
I am.
I always want to say doctor, but I don't know if she
No.
likes. Yeah,
Nope.
as a health professional,
Mhm.
she wants this for you so badly. We want this for you so badly, but I
Mhm.
can't want it more than you do.
Right.
Like, if you don't really want it, I can give you all the tools, I can give you all the pep talks, I can do all the things. But if you don't actually have passion and desire to achieve this goal,
Mhm.
then it's kind of a waste on both parts. Definitely my part and your part, but um, yeah. So you need to decide if it's something that you actually want to achieve, and then
Right.
are you willing to do the hard things to get there? It's going to be
Mhm.
hard. There's going to be days that you just want to throw in the towel. I recently just finished a mini cut. It was a pretty aggressive one. And I had to go fairly low calorie because of my time constraint. And was it the best timeline? No. But I also had a goal and back to being
Mhm.
what am I? A
You are
moderator?
an
I'm an
upholder.
upholder.
Uh-huh.
Being the upholder, like I wasn't
Mhm.
going to not do it.
Right.
Some days were better than others, but there were many days I was so freaking hungry. My brain went foggy.
Oh.
And it was,
Mhm.
it was tough. But at the same time, like it wasn't forever. It was 6 weeks,
Right.
8 weeks at the max. And like I could see the end in sight. But that, that was just that was, I was willing to do the hard thing to get there.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
and you did. Yeah.
a lot of people aren't willing to do the hard things to get to where they want to be. So is it worth it? And are you going to take the intentional actions to get there? And then, as a shameless plug, and I might not be the best fit for everybody. I am not the best fit for
Of
everybody.
course
I
you
will
aren't.
tell you right there. So having a coach, having a mentor that you can have in your corner to help you map this out, to keep you
Mhm.
accountable on a weekly basis, to not let you give in to your emotional state
Right.
when you feel like everything is just too much. But being able to have that, um, um, outside opinion and look into things and saying, okay, let's have a logical look at this. That is so helpful. And just
Agreed.
knowing that somebody that's had experience with working with people before, I'm sorry, I know you're a beautiful and special individual that God made you, but more than likely your situation is not that unique.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
and there are, we have the tools to help you get there. So
Right.
anything else,
Yeah.
Andrea? This
No,
I talked a lot.
I think it was really, really helpful. I hope people walk away with just that, the understanding that there are people trained in helping people reach goals. Like that's literally your job. in a nutshell,
Mhm.
is helping people reach goals. You work with a very specific set of goals. They are health and fitness related. Um, but yeah, it you don't have to do this alone. If you have experienced failures, but you still have the desire and you still have the drive, then seek out someone, seek out some help for this, because yeah, we're there's very little that we're supposed to be doing alone. I'm finding. So,
Oh my gosh, for sure. Absolutely. And there's tools and resources out there that
mhm.
can help you. Um, and if you feel like you're needing to talk to somebody, or maybe, you're like, Ashley, I love you, but I don't think you would make a great coach for me. I'm happy to refer out, but I would also love to just chat with you.
Yeah, of
I do
course.
free calls all the time.
Mhm.
So hit me up and let's see if there's something that we can do together that I can help you achieve your goals. And same for Andrea too. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
All right.
Andrea, this was fun. And as always, if you have questions, if you have topics that you would like us to talk about, we
Mhm.
would love to hear from you.
We
So
would.
please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our contact information is in the show notes below. So email and Instagram are both on there. So hit us up whichever way you feel most comfortable. But
Mhm.
otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this episode and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye. The content provided in the AA podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute medical advice.